welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about JetEngine. What is JetEngine, how to use it with Gutenberg, and also what, before that, is a CPT or custom post type. So of course this is going to be a pretty long video because I'm going to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to use it. We're going to build this platform right here. This little site, of course, take a look at the look of it. We're going to really focus on the functionality, not the look. So what we're going to build is this artist and albums site, or section at least of a site. And of course, there's going to be a lot of parts, so you are more than welcome to skip directly below that video. There's going to be time codes, so you can skip directly to what you need. And of course, some people also watch it on a 1.5 or 2x speed, so that's okay if you prefer to do that. So here's a look at what we're going to build together with JetEngine and Gutenberg. So this is the artist page that lists all the artists that are there in the album, in the website, sorry. We can click on any of those to go to the artist page, where we have the title, the album, the picture, sorry, the biography, and then we have the albums of that artist. If we click on any of those albums, we are taken to the album itself. Same thing, title, album cover. Then we have the group or the artist that did this album. We have the release date of the album, and we have the genre of the album, rock, country, and so on. Then we have a description of the album, and we have the song listing of the album songs. If I take a look at the albums, it's the same thing, it's the opposite. So the albums page is going to be the listing of all the albums. We're going to have a little filter as well to filter all the albums by artist or by year, one or the other or both. And of course, again, if we click on any of those albums, we have the listing, we have everything, and we can go from the genre to the from the album to the genre or to the artist. In fact, genre would probably not be a link itself. So this is what we're going to do together. And by the way, we have a little slider here if we have more than one album, or more than 3 albums, I should say. So this is what we're going to do with JetEngine and Crocoblock. So let's start with this website here. I have already installed a couple of things, so let's go through that quickly. First of all, I have installed Astra, and I also have Cadence. There's another way to do that with Cadence Pro and so on. So maybe I'm going to show Bricks and Cadence Pro in another video, but right now for this video, we're going to focus on Astra. Not using Astra's tool, by the way, just to lay out, have a theme in to build upon. Let's say it like that. In it, by the way, I have already came and added a little bit of CSS. Whoops, sorry. Skips that. Simply to put a limit to our website because we don't want to take the entire width. And I know that Astra does it by default. We have different tools also in the customizer for Astra. But for an unknown reason, when we are using Jet Theme Core, that's the name of the plugin, it kind of overwrites that and will take the entire width when we build a theme or template. So that's why I needed to put a little bit of CSS here as well to bring everything back to center, and first of all to put a maximum width right there. And I use the same width as the default Astra one. That's why I have only 980. So this is already on the website. Also, I came and already installed a couple of plugins. So WP Vivid Backup is simply to restore the site quickly when I do the exercise. And all the others come from Crocoblock. So JetEngine and so on comes from Crocoblock. So this is already installed. Now, I mentioned, first of all, that JetEngine is used for creating custom post type. So what is a custom post type, first of all? Well, to talk about custom post type, we first need to understand one thing about WordPress. In WordPress, everything is a post. So we already have posts here that comes with WordPress. We also have pages, but pages were not there at the beginning. At the beginning, there was only post, and pages was added later on. And that is cleared by taking a look at the backhand. Let's say, for example, taking a look at the database, you will see that we don't have any page database. We only have posts and post meta database. So everything inside of it is a post, in fact. So we are limited to one real post type, and we have added, or WordPress adds by default, another one, which is page. To our post is added also categories and tags, which is not there by default with pages, but you can add that with some plugins if you want to, by the way. So we have two types: posts used usually for blog posts or news, things like that, and pages for more static content. But if you want more, if you want to do like we did in our case, we want to have the albums. If I show you, for example, here, what will be our custom post type, we want to have artists, we want to have songs for the albums, and we want to have the albums themselves. So how can we do something like that with WordPress? Pretty hard by default, by using just what comes with WordPress at first. Okay, so what we're going to do is either install some plugin. For example, sometimes we're going to add a portfolio plugin or testimonial plugin. And what they will do, in fact, it will add something to our menu at the left. And what it will do, in fact, is add a custom post type for us. A custom post type called portfolio, for example, where we'll add image, description, links, and so on. Same thing for testimonials, where we'll have pictures, we will have a name, we will have the testimonial itself, and so on, maybe the position. And all of that is added for us by using a plugin. But we can do the same thing ourselves by using custom post types. So of course, custom says it. So it's a post, in fact, but it's a custom one. We give it the name and the elements that we want. So that's a custom post type. Now, there are a couple of ways to do custom post types. First way is to do it through code. You go to the PHP, in PHP functions, for example, .php, and you add custom post types there. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is through a plugin. So we have a bunch of plugins, like, for example, Pods, which is a free one. We have Toolset that I've been using for many years. We have MetaBox. We have Advanced Custom Field that creates fields, not necessarily post type, by the way. We have to combine it with something like CPT UI, for example, custom post type user interface. And we have JetEngine. JetEngine is a tool created by Crocoblock, and it has a lot of other tools that comes with it. So let me show you Crocoblock's website. So Crocoblock, when it started, was only for Elementor, by the way. That's why I started using it, because I'm using Elementor as a page builder. But more and more, they have extended their products to also work with Gutenberg, or the default WordPress page builder or blocks builder. Okay. And Crocoblock is the name of the company. They have many products, as you can see there. And I don't think they are all listed, by the way, as you can see. So the main product, the one that we're going to use to create custom post type, and by the way, taxonomies, forgot to talk about taxonomies, but you can see taxonomies a little bit as the categories of our custom post. So post already has categories by default, and tags, which is the same thing, by the way. But we can create our own categories, but instead of calling that categories, they call that a taxonomy. So back to Crocoblock. So we're going to use JetEngine to be able to create our own custom post type. Now, JetEngine allows us to do a lot of things regarding to that, and that's a really powerful one. Like I said, I used to use another one, but this one, in my opinion, is even more powerful. And as you can see it works with Elementor and Gutenberg without any problem. I have also installed a couple of other tools because when you buy Crocoblock, you have all of those included for free, or depending on which one that you choose. For example, if I click on JetEngine here, starts from $43 for one site. For Elementor or Gutenberg is the same thing. That's the same tool. And as you can see, if I move down there, you can read all of that for yourself. By the way, I encourage you to do that. So it's a yearly subscription, and this is just for JetEngine itself. There are others with Jet included, but that are part of JetEngine. Or you can have the old Crocoblock suite for $199 per year. If I go to pricing, you will see that you can customize that as well. So you see I'm starting with 0 per year. And if I add, for example, JetEngine, it's going to be 43 per year. Okay, so why do I have 88? Probably I clicked somewhere at the same time, I guess. Let me see. So anyway, I don't know why it says $88 here. Maybe there's a bug or there's something selected somewhere. But anyway, you can use JetEngine, and you can, this is just for one site, and this is per year, by the way. Or you can even add others. In our case, we're gonna use some other tools just to show how complete that can be. I'm gonna use also the Jet Smart Filter. We're gonna need that to filter the product. If you remember, just want to make sure that I'm using the right site here. I have a couple of sites open. So that will be used for, let me show you, the album filters here at the top. This is entirely optional. This is just to show you that with a couple of other tools that from the same company, we can go a couple of steps further. So we can filter our data directly on the website. To do that, we will need the Jet Smart Filter. Then I will also use, it doubles every time, so there's a problem here. Probably did something wrong. But anyway, also, Jet Style Manager is totally free. This is just for Gutenberg. If you're using that for Elementor, you already have the Style tab in Elementor, so you don't need that too. But if you want to style the elements for Gutenberg, you can of course do that manually, but Jet Style Manager would allow us to do it a little bit more easily. So this is a download link. You can download it because it's free. And I'm going to use Jet Theme Core. This is not something required. Again, it depends on the tools that you use. For example, if you use not Jet, but Elementor Pro, sorry, you already have tools to create templates. So you don't need Jet Theme Core. Same thing if you use Cadence Pro, for example, you have tools to create templates out of that, bricks, and so on. All of those are their own templating system. I personally have installed Jet Theme Core because I want to be the most neutral possible, and I want also, of course, to go the most, and well, I won't say free because, of course, as you can see, JetEngine is not free, but JetEngine only and everything else, or Crocoblock only and everything else will be free. Of course, if you have paid tools, you have some advantages of using paid tools, so I won't discourage you from doing that, but I just want to go from scratch for people that don't have those tools. My recommendation, of course, Elementor Pro to work with Crocoblock is the best combination possible. I did that with Elementor Cadence Pro as well. Works pretty well, of course, if you want to. So if you don't have a pro tool of something, then, of course, you will need Jet Theme Core again. So this is $86 plus 23, so $109. So I don't know why it's double here. But anyway, this is what it would cost you per year. Now, of course, you can have all the Crocoblock tools for a yearly price of $199 for one website, or the same thing, but for unlimited website for $399 per year. Now, if you want to do like me and go full, of course, the price are raising very periodically, let's say each 2-3 years, because they keep adding other stuff. So now the current price is $999 for lifetime. This is the all-inclusive, but lifetime. So this is for the Crocoblock tools. So of course, if you want just one site, if you want just the tools that you need, JetEngine and maybe JetSmart Filter and Theme Core, then it's going to be around $100 per year. So let's go now to take a look at how to do custom post types. So I'm going to go with that site here. I have already installed the Crocoblock wizard, which as well allowed me to install the Smart Filter, the Style Manager, the JetEngine, and Jet Theme Core. I also have one additional plugin that is not listed on their site. It's on a different site, which is the Jet Form Builder, because it's free as well. There's a pro version that just contains add-on, but there's a free version as well for the Jet Form Builder. So, all right, so I have all those plugins plus this one for backups and restoration of my site. So let's go right away with JetEngine. So let's focus on that one for now. If I click on JetEngine, I have all those possibilities here. These are add-ons. It's going to add another plugin, but link to JetEngine, which is of course free, by the way. So we don't need that in our case, but as you can see, you can add calendars if you have events that you want to display on the calendar on your page. You have a map listing for Google Maps, and there are other kind of maps as also, I think. You have custom content type and so on. So there's a lot of tools that you can use there. Also, external modules, for example, if you want to have custom visibility conditions, this is something that you can do with JetEngine. So pretty powerful. There are also forms, but as you can see, it's legacy, so they don't recommend you to use that anymore. What they recommend you to use is Jet Form Builder. So that's why this is the one that we installed. You can, well, what would you create? Sorry, what you create, custom post type, taxonomies. They call that a skin here. So when they say skin manager, that allows you to export and import skin. In other words, it allows you to export a custom post type, the taxonomies that you created, and other types that we won't necessarily cover in this tutorial. And of course, once you have exported them, you can import them in a new site. So that's pretty cool. It only import and export, by the way, the structure, not the data. You do have a simple sample content here, but it doesn't export all the data, just one of each. So unfortunately, if you want to export the data as well, you're going to use another tool like WP All Export or something like that. You can generate your own shortcodes and you can create glossaries as well. You can have other videos in order to know more about those tools. What I really want is the post type. So you have it right there, the custom post types. So I'm going to click on post types here to be able to create my custom post types. And as I mentioned, we will create different custom post types. We will create, in fact, 3 post types here. So one for the artists, one for the albums of those artists, and one for the songs that will be contained in those albums. And by the way, we could have created just 2, for example, albums and artists, or even just maybe albums. And inside albums, put the description of the album, put what artist or which artist did the album, and the song listing. But the problem with that is that we are tied now to less details, let's say it like that. If I want to have a picture of the artist, I will have to create a field for the artist picture that will be repeated for each album or of that artist. Not necessarily good. Same thing for its biography. Same thing for songs. You will say, okay, there's only a number of songs per album, and this song will most likely not appear on other albums. Well, that's not necessarily the case. By separating everything, we allow ourselves to have those songs, not a different song with the same title, really the same song on a different album. So for example, I don't know, if we have the Beatles album, there might be a compilation of the greatest hits somewhere, like a couple of years ago, a few years ago, was the album #1 with many Beatles songs. So if we want to have both that song on the original album and on the greatest hits album, we need to have them separated. Same thing for, we have Shania Twain, for example. She has a song on Woman in Me, which is, I don't remember the title right now. No One Needs to Know. That's it. That was also on the original soundtrack for Twister. So if we have both of them linked together, we will have to create, it is possible to have the song of the albums in it, but if we have two times the same song on the two different albums, we're going to repeat the same information twice. So bottom line, to have everything linked together instead of repeating the same information, we need to create separate items. So this way, artists are separated from the albums, the songs are separated from the albums, so it can be used on many of those. So that's what we're going to do together. I hope I didn't confuse you, but if you're a little more advanced, you know, database and so on, hopefully you will understand what I'm talking about. So let's go here and create our first one. Let's go with the artist first of all. So let's create our new artist. So we have the post type name, and we have an example here of projects. So this is a name for us that will appear on the left menu. So I'm going to call that artist. I'm going to do like they do, put an S here, by the way. And as you can see, as soon as I hit the tab key or click somewhere else, it's going to insert that for a post slug as well, without any capital letters, without any spaces, and so on. You can change it if you want to, by the way, but this is how it will put it by default. And this is what you're going to have in the URL at the top. This is what you're going to have if you want to refer to it. For example, you want to link to something. This is the slug that you're going to use. So no one will see that except maybe in the URL. This is not what people will see. This is what the people will see. But still, internally, this is what WordPress will use. I won't cover all the fields and details, so I'm going to skip those two here. Whether you want to have a link or so on. The labels here is what is going to appear in the elements here. For example, we have post here, all post, add new post, and so on. So if you leave it like that, it will simply leave the same thing as you have here, add new item, and so on. If you want to change that, you can. And the first thing that you might want to change that is not required, but you might want to change is the singular name. So artist, without an S, for example, in my case. And as you can see, instead of add new, then it will be add new artist. And then I can tab through all of them if I want to change that. But of course, if you want to use what is by default, you don't even need to do that. You can just leave it by default. It's going to say new item or new artist without having you to do anything. So this is for the labels on the right side, left and right, sorry. Advanced settings. So again, I won't cover everything here because I suppose that you might already know about custom post type. If not, I don't want this video to take 4 hours, so I'm going to skip a few things. Let's say that here what is important to change is simply, you see here that, by the way, it always is post. So it's going to be treated like a post for WordPress. So what is important is whether we have archive. We can have an archive page with the listing of all those elements. In our case, all the albums and all the artists. So we don't want to toggle that off. And hierarchical, whether you want to have parents and children, most of the time not. Menu position is whether you want to change the order that it will appear on the left side. Again, won't change that in my case. What is important are the two last items. So menu icons is the icon that will appear here. And as you can see with post, it's always that little pin here by default. We want to change that, of course, for our artists. So I'm going to simply type one here. So group, let's say, and I'm going to use that icon for the artist. Now, what does it support? This is really important. So support, if I create a new post, for example, you will have, waiting for that, you have the title, and the content or description, sometimes called the description or the content here, you will have on the right side the public status and so on. But what is more important, maybe the categories. And in our case, if you remember, for a custom post type, it's going to be called a taxonomy. And we also have the featured image. We can have excerpt as well and things like that. Okay, so these are all integrated things for WordPress. If we want to use any of those or all of those, this is what we're going to decide here in the support section. So you see that title and editor is already selected by default. So of course you will want to have a title always. And if you want to have the editor, the Gutenberg editor, that's what you see here. In our case, we do want those things, but we also want to have the artist picture. So I'm going to click on that and select thumbnail, which is in fact the featured image. All the other options, I don't need them, so I won't select anything more into that section. Meta fields, I don't need any meta fields in this case, so I'm going to come back to that later on for the art albums. Admin column is what will appear in the overall page in the back end of that element. So for example, let me just go back here. An artist, if I click on all artists, you will see that we have only by default the title and the date. If we want to have something else, then we need to add it in that section here called admin column. So in our case, we have the title, the editor, which doesn't make any sense to put it there, and thumbnail could be added there, but again, it's going to be a little bit big. Each field will be expanded. So we don't want necessarily anything else. But let's say, for example, for the songs, if I want to also show the length of the song, then I would come here and add this new column. Okay, name it, give the meta value, and so on. So we'll do that later on, as you can see. So let's see. We're going to click on add post type. And now the post type is already added right here. And we have artist, which lists all the artists, and add new artist. So before adding another one, we'll create our two other custom post type. So unfortunately, there's no add new button here. We need to really go back to post types here on the left side and click again on add new. And this time it's going to be the songs. If I go in that order, doesn't really matter the order that I'm going to do it. I'm going to skip labels. I'm going to go directly to advanced settings. What we need for the songs is the song title and the length. We want to display those information. But also, we want to have a way to display them in a specific order. Because, for example, if I display an album, let's say, I'm going to display that one. I want to have the order of those songs. I want them to be in the same order as they are on the album itself. Okay. And you know that by default, it will always be, you might know if you don't, anyway, I'm going to tell you, when you display a post type, it's always by default from the last one to the first one. Because remember, a post, in fact, in WordPress Mind, is an article, a post article. So you want to show the latest one first. So it's always by the latest one to the first one. And this is based, of course, on the publication date. So when you published it or created it. So if we want to have something that we can decide ourselves what will be the order, we're going to need another field. So that's what we're going to do right now. So first of all, let's go with the default WordPress fields. So I'm going to go directly here. First of all, I'm going to change the icon. So there's already, we are doing the song here. So I'm going to use the audio icon. We already have title. That's okay. We have editor. We don't need the editor. We're not going to describe how the song was created or things like that. So I can click on the little X here to remove the editor. Don't need a picture either. So the only default WordPress elements that I need is just the title. But I also want to have the order and I want to have the length. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a custom field. So they call that here meta fields in JetEngine. Other one will call it a custom field. And this is what advanced custom field is for, by the way, but it does only this part here. So with JetEngine, you can do everything at the same time. And by the way, as opposed to other tools, like for example, toolset, you don't need to create those in two-step. In toolset, you create a custom post type. If you want a taxonomy, you create the taxonomy. And if you want to have custom fields, you need to do another step and create custom fields and associate them with the custom post type. In JetEngine, you have all of that in the same screen. The post type and its field. So if I click on add a new one, I'm going to give it a label. So this one is going to be the song order. As soon as I hit the tab key, it's going to fill the name ID. It's the same thing as a slug. The object type will be a field. And then we have the field type. So if you have ever worked with Forms plugin, it's the same thing that we have here. So whether we want to have a text, a date or time, both of them, a text area, and so on. So what type of field would that be? In our case, the song order is going to be a number. So we can use the number field here. That would have a little up and down arrow like that, by the way, on the back end as well. So we can move it up and down like that. We can set a minimum and a maximum value. We won't do that. And a step value, if we use those, whether we will go by 1, by 5, by 10, we'll do that in the range filter. You'll see what I mean. Description optional. If the label is not 100% clear, you might want to have a description that's going to appear below it so that people will know what to put in that field. In our case, I think it's pretty obvious. Then you have the field width. 100% means that it will take the entire width of the window. And it's only, and by the way, in the backhand here when we add a new one. So let me give you an example here. So if I say that it's going to take 100%, it's going to fill the entire screen here and the width. As you can see, in my case, I have them side by side simply because I have set that to be different. I have set that to be 50% because I know I'm going to have another one beside it. So this way they can be side by side instead of one under the other. So let's put 50%. I can have a default value, which I will not use. And you can have also conditional to display only when certain conditions are met, which is not my case here. So that's okay for this one. I'm going to add another one, which is for the length. So length here like that. Tab, I'm going to add the slug. Again, it's going to be a field type, and I'm going to leave it for text. Because if I put date, it's going to ask me for a date, for example, January 1st, 2020. And it's not a date in my case. Time is not good as well because it's going to be 9 a.m. or things like that. And we don't want an a.m. or p.m. We want a length, so minutes and seconds. So because of that, I'm going to leave it with text, and I'm going to be able to type anything that I want inside of that. I'm going to switch that to 50%. We can set it to be required, by the way. So I won't set it to be required in case we don't have that information right away. So that's the only thing that I want. I'm going to simply, well, we could have that column, by the way, the length, like we did in the example. So let's call that length again. That will be there. And let's say we want to have the meta value. We have post terms. So meta value is a way for JetEngine, that's simply the value of a custom field. So if you use other tools, you might be used to the custom field value. That's the same thing. Terms are taxonomies. So in this case, it's going to be the meta value of our field that we have above here, which is the length here. By the way, this is what the user will see. This is the name that we have here for WordPress internal purpose. So we're going to use that name here, length. Must be written the exact same way. Column order, so by default, it's going to be the last one. So if you want that to be between the title and the date, you can put 2, for example, like that. You can have a prefix and suffix, and you can make it sortable or not. So in my case, I won't make it sortable. So let's click on Add Post Type. And now we have both artists and songs. Finally, let's create the albums type. So again, post types. I'm going to go a little bit faster this time. So add new albums. I'm going to go to the advanced settings. So for the albums, what we want again is the title, of course, the cover. These information will come from something else. But this here, the release date is important. The genre will be something like else, and the bio, of course, will be linked to the artist. But we need the release date, and we also need, of course, the editor for the content, the description of the album. So let's do just that. Here, let's go at the bottom. Let's change the icon, first of all, for album. We already have title and editor. That's okay. We will also want the thumbnail. That's all we need for the default WordPress field. But like I said, we also need to have the release date. So that will be a custom field or meta field to use JetEngine's terminology. So let's add a new meta field. Let's call that release date. Put maybe a capital letter here. Release date will be the name or ID. And this can be a date because it will be a date specifically in a period of time. And that, by choosing date, will allow us to have a little drop down with a calendar inside of it to pick up a date. So that's cool. Since we only have one field, I'm going to leave it to 100% because there's no other custom field. We could set it to be required, but not in this case. And that's about it. Do I want to show anything else than the title? Probably not. But if you want to, you can have the release date. So let's do that quickly. Release date. So again, a meta value and release date, which is the slug that we have right there. Where is it? My meta field. There we go. Release date. So you see, replace spaces by a dash here. All right, so add custom post type. So we have all of our custom post type done. Now there's one thing that we need more. Like I said here, we also have that, the genre, which is going to be, I mentioned it, a taxonomy. And if you remember, taxonomy is a little bit like the categories of our custom post type. So this is not here. This is separated. As you can see, we have taxonomies here. Metabox, by the way, we won't use that. But metabox is when you want to have a custom field, a little bit like ACF does, but just for an already existing element. So if I want to have pages, but with a category, for example, I could use a meta box to use that, to do that. Category is not a good example because that's a taxonomy, but let's say I want to have for the user, add a city field, for example, for the user, I could do that with a meta box. So let's go with taxonomies. So remember, it's a little bit like a category. So I'm going to add a new one. The name will be genre. I'm going to put it in plural, like they do here. And if you want to, you could specify the singular one. But if you don't, I think it's going to use the plural one for everything, but that's okay. Do we want to have meta fields? For example, if you want to specify a color picker to pick a color, things like that, then you can. It's not my case. What I want to do, though, is go into the advanced settings. And one thing that is not enabled by default, and it should be, I think, is the, how do we call that? The hierarchical. Okay? If you leave that toggled off, when you go, well, let me simply say that. Post type, sorry, yeah. I forgot to choose a post type. There we go. So I want to associate that with my albums. So let's go with albums here. Here we go. So let's add a taxonomy and let me show you what it will do by default. So let's go to album and add a new one. I'm going to open a new tab to do that. And as you can see here, if you want to have a new genre, you'll need to type it. The first one, of course, if you type, let's say country, nothing will appear. But if it's already there, when you start typing, it will give you a little tooltip, just not tooltip, but a drop down to give you suggestion of what it can find. But you don't see, you need to know about it. So people will type country, some people will type it with a capital C, lowercase c, or things like that. Can be confusing. By using the option here called is hierarchical, let me go back to advanced settings here and toggle that on, update it, and refresh this page. Okay. Now you can see that we don't have that field anymore. So that means that if I add a new one, let me just go there first of all and add a new one. So let's say rock. I'm gonna have the two that we need right away. So rock and country, enter. So we have two here. So if we add a new album, you will see that they are already present with a checkbox. So it's really easy to just select the checkbox that goes with it. If you want to have a new one like jazz, then you can do it right there if you want to still. Okay, add a new category. And it's going to be checked by default, of course, when you add it to this one. Okay, so always possible to add another one, but we already have the suggestion of what is already selected right there. So easier for the user, I think, anyway. So that's why I always toggle on hierarchical in my case. Okay, so now we have our three custom post types and we have our taxonomy for the albums. Now, before doing the next step of inserting some data, I want to do an extra step first. And that step is create relations. Because right now we have three distinct things. We have the albums, we have the artists, and we have the songs. But how can I link together the artist with the album he or she or they have created? How can I link the songs to the album where they appear? There's no way right now. So it's good thing to have them separated in the database, in the mine, in the post type that like we have right there. But still, we need to have a way to link them together. And that's why we have relations right there. So let's create two relations. A relation between our artist and the album that they're going to create, and another relation between the album and the songs that they contain. So let's go with the first one. You can give it the name that you want. I like to give it a meaningful name, so something like artists, albums, like that. Albums, not like that, but like that. The parent object is the one that is the main one that will have children. So in our case, it's the artist album because the artist will create albums. And one artist can have many albums. So the parent object in this case will be the artist. So artist and the children will be the albums that we just created. And as you can see, we have a bunch. So you can use the default WordPress elements there as well. The type of relation, this is really important here. We have three choices, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. So starting from the parent, in this case the artist, what is its relation to the album or the children? So one-to-one means that one artist can only have one album. And at the same time, an album can only have one artist, by the way. One-to-many means that one artist, because it always goes from the parent, so one artist can have many albums, but an album cannot have many artists. So it's just one way from the parent to the children, but an album cannot have many artists. So no various artists or soundtrack or things like that. Many to many, in our case, that means that an artist can have many albums, but an albums can also have many artists. So this is usually what we will choose, because if we have compilations, if we have various artist album, if we have the best of 2022, if we have a soundtrack, we will want to have many artists. Or if you have a duet, David Bowie with Freddie Mercury, for example, so we want to have many artists for that album or even that song. Now, of course, we don't go into details. We didn't have the way to specify many artists, by the way, for one song, but we can go further, of course, if we wanted to. So many to many is the best choice here, but it's the best choice for the next one we're going to create as well. So just to show you a difference, I'm going to say one to many. So in our own website, one artist can only have or can have many albums for sorry, but an album can only be made by one artist. And like I said, not the real case scenario, but just to show you the difference between one to many and many to many. So parent relation is if you have parent and children, which is not our case right here. So it's not the same thing as the relationship here. So everything else, we're going to leave it by default. And if you want to add a specific field for just for the relation, you can do so there as well. It's not our case. So I'm going to simply add the relation here. And then I'm going to create another one for a relation between the album and the songs of that album. So again, I'm going to click relations, add a new one. I'm going to call that albums, songs. Parent, of course, as you might guess, will be the album, and the children, the songs. And this time I'm going to put many to many, just in case we want to have a song on a compilation or greatest hits, something like that. Everything else, we'll leave it by default. So let's click on add relation. So now we have our custom post types, we have our taxonomies, and we have our relations that are created. Now we're ready to start adding some data to it. So let's start first of all, for example, with an artist. Let's go like that. So I'm going to add a new artist. I have the title, I have the biography. So let's say I will say the Beatles. And if I get some text copied from Wikipedia just for the exercise, so I'm going to use that as the description, copy and paste. For the image here, I have the artist, the featured image. I already have uploaded images for the cover album and the artist. So let's use that one and click. Usually, by the way, you should have an alt text and so on. I'm going to set featured image. Here we go. And you see here, because we have created relationship, another advantage is that we have this option here where we can connect albums to this artist. So I can click on that. And of course, as you can see, it's empty because we don't have created any album yet. But if we do create the album first, we will be able to link it to the artist. Don't worry, we can do the opposite as well. When we create an album, we will be able to link it to the artist. So that will still be working. So I'm going to publish that one. Click publish again. And then I could add others, but I'm going to simply go with the albums this time. I'm going to add a new album just to show you how it is. Now let's stick with the Beatles for now. So I'm going to add another album, by the Beatles, which is Abbey Road. Again, I'm going to put some description taken from the Wikipedia website. Let's do that. I'm going to add a featured image for the album. Let's put the genre first, for example. So I'm going to click on rock. rock and roll or rock. The album cover, which is this one, and set feature image. And now we have the release date. So this one was released on, I don't know, I've put that in the description, sorry. 26 September 1969. So let's click on that. And of course, I can go month by month until September 1969. What I'm going to do, I'm going to simply go to this here, and I said 26. And I'm going to simply change here the year for 1969. It's going to be faster to do so. As you can see, it changes that automatically in the calendar. Now we have the songs that we can link to here, and we have the artist that we can link to here. So since we have already created the artist, I can connect the artist here. And as you can see, now we have the list of all the artists. And of course, we only have one. And by the way, since one album can only have one artist, it will know that as well. So connect artist. And now, boom, you can see that we have the Beatles. We can edit the Beatles from there. We can view it. We can disconnect it from this album. Great. So I have everything here on my right side. Let's click publish, publish again. And now let's do the same thing for a song. Let's add a new song. Let's have the first one, for example, for this album. So the title here, it's going to be Come Together. And as you can see, since we didn't use the editor, we have kind of the old editor, but that's okay. The song order here, that's the first one of the album. And the length will be for 19 minutes. And again, since I have already created my albums, I can connect that song right away to the albums. Cool. No cover or anything else. So let's click publish on that one. And here we go. And of course, I can do that for each of them, which I won't, of course, because it's going to be pretty long. So that's the reason why I have here another site that I've already imported all of that. So I have recreated here my artist, song, and album. But as you can see now, everything is already imported. All my artists are there, all my songs are there, and all my albums are there as well. So everything in this one is already done concerning adding data anyway. So now, if I want to show all my albums or all my artists or anything, let's go with artists first, for example. I want to show Shania Twain. I'm going to click on View. What will happen? I see Shania Twain. I see the description here. And the image is not visible, probably because in the customizer for Astra, I didn't specify to add the image, but the image should appear as well. But I have no control on how it's going to appear, which order is going to appear, unless my theme allows me to do so. For example, here, if I go to the customizer, whoops, little problem here. Let me fix that. All right, since I imported the site, I needed to resave the permalinks. Everything's fine now. So for example, here, I would probably go into the blog and archive. No, this is a single, sorry, my mistake. And not a user really. So featured in image is supposed to be there. So I don't know why it's not showing. But anyway, like I said, usually I use templates with Elementor, so I don't even use those tools. And each theme will have its own differences anyway, so I won't spend any time on that. But I do already have the artist, and I can go from one artist to the other with those links, by the way. So Queen and so on. If I go to take a look at all my artists, by the way, it already exists. We have the artists here, and it already shows the different artists. So everything works except for Shania Twain. So I need to check what's going on here. But you see the picture is there for Queen, Led Zeppelin. And we have by default the picture, the featured image, in other words, the title, the description, a part of it anyway, and a read more link. As you can see, the picture are not the same size by purpose, and they're all one under the other. So this is the default layout of the theme. Same thing for album. We have the archive album, exact same layout. The featured image, the title, the description, and the read more link. If I click on any album, I have the album cover, I have the title, I have the description, but what about the release date? What about the artist and so on? It doesn't show that. For example, this album here doesn't show the release date, though I have put it. Why? Because by default, it only shows the regular, general WordPress fields. So for the fields that I already have, featured image, title, and description, all of that will be visible. But if I have other fields, like release date, like the length of a song, if I do the same thing, for example, for songs, you're going to see that we do have archives for songs. But the only thing that it shows is the title because we don't have any description or content, and the length of the song and the order are not default WordPress fields, so they don't show. And if I click on a specific song, same thing, only have the title. We won't go into the song details, by the way, to show them. As I showed you previously, we will stick with the artists and albums. So show all artists and all album, or specific artists and specific album. So let's do that next. So in order to create our templates or parts, let's start first of all with the artist one. That's the easiest one. So let's go to the dashboard, of course. So since I'm using, again, Crocoblock, I'm using the Jet theme builder. I think that's the name, if my memory is good. The theme builder here. So again, if you are using Elementor Pro, Cadence Pro, Bricks, or anything like that, well, Bricks is a little bit different, by the way, because it uses Gutenberg, so you can do that in Gutenberg. But if you use Bricks to build a template, you won't have access to all the tools of Crocoblock, by the way. So yes, the latest version, 1.5, does support JetEngine in the drop-down where you select the type of custom fields, but that's about it. So it won't be enough to do everything that we're doing right now. So anyway, so I'm going to use the theme builder here inside the Crocoblock menu, and I'm going to create a new page template. So first of all, let's add a condition. So where do we want to show that? In our case, we want to create an archive of all the artists right now. So it's going to be what we're going to choose. So include, and then we're going to select the archive one. And then we have all archive, but beware here. I don't know exactly why it's built like that. Probably because it takes everything that is not necessarily JetEngine and what is JetEngine. But don't do as I did the first time I did that, all artist archives. That will work, honestly. But at some point, there will be some conflicts between the artist one and the album one, and you'll have a hard time. One will probably override the other and so on. So what we need to do is use the CPT archive, custom post type archive. We have archive and taxonomy right now. You have that for single page as well. We'll see that later. But you need to use the CPT archive and not just archive, not just the all artists or thing like that. And then you select the post type, which is in this case the artist. You can have more than one condition if you want to, but in our case, that's okay. So let's click create. So now we have our template. Let's rename it. So let's say all artists. Then you can add your custom header and your custom footer if you want to. You see the condition right there. We won't change the header and footer in our case, so we'll just add a new body. So I'm going to click on add body. You can add one from library if you have already created a theme template. This is your parts here, the theme templates. But in our case, it's not created yet, so you can create a new template directly from there. So of course, since I have only Gutenberg, I don't have Elementor, for example, installed. I only have the choice for the block editor, and I'm going to give it a name. So the name that I'm going to give it is all artists. just like the name of the theme builder. Let's click create. So I can edit later or edit it right away. If I want to create more than one, I could edit later, but right now let's go to the editor directly. So now let's take a look at what we want. So what we want here is the artist archive. So we want to have all of them, of course, separated. We want to have the title, or in other words, the artist name, the picture, a little extract, and a read more link. And the picture itself, by the way, will be a link as well, not the title in this case. That's a choice, by the way. So the way that we work with JetEngine, we need to create a listing. The first element here is a listing, and we repeat that listing many times. And if you're like me, the first time that I came across that, coming from another tool like toolset, was a little bit confused with that. Why do one more step? I used to do everything inside the same kind of a, not builder, but same template, if I can say it like that. Most of it was in HTML code, by the way. Now with the block editor, you can do some with the Gutenberg editor. But still, everything was done in the same place. So why have two different places? One place where we create that archive page and another one where we create one element. And in fact, yes, that's one more step in a certain way, but it's way more flexible because you can do absolutely anything you want inside one listing. And after that, insert the listing and make it repeat how many times that you want. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to create the listing first of all. So before creating the artist template. So yes, we already have the template here, which is the name for all the artists, and that title will never appear. Don't know why. So I can mask it or not. It will not appear anyway. What I would do here, like I said, is add a listing. And you see listing grid that is right there. But of course, we don't have any listing. By the way, I'm going to show you just before creating the listing, the tools that are added by JetEngine. So let's move here and go to our section. So Jet Smart Filter is something else. So I skipped it, looks like. So Smart Filter. The JetEngine elements are mixed with the other things. Here we go. So in the design section here, we have the dynamic field, which is used to add any dynamic field. Could be a custom post type or something else, the title, for example, and so on. We have a dynamic image that is used, of course, for the thumbnail or the featured image. It can also be used if you use a gallery, for example, a gallery of image. You can use that as well. Dynamic repeater can be used if you do create a gallery. You'll have probably one image that you will make it. If you use a custom field to do that, people can have a repeatable field. So let's say, for example, that I would have created just one album and no songs. And I want to put the songs inside the album. What I could have done is create the album and then inside of it have a repeater field called song. And then I can click and add as many songs as I want to that specific album. As I previously mentioned, it's better in this case to have them separated so I can use them somewhere else and so on. But still, this is something that could have been done if I didn't have separate them. So that would be a repeater. Then you have a dynamic meta. Don't forget, a meta for JetEngine is simply a taxonomy. So no, sorry, mixing things. Rewind. A meta is a custom field. Sorry. So if you create a custom field like we did for the release date, for the length, and so on, these are dynamic meta. Taxonomies, my bad, are terms. So if you want to use taxonomies like the genre that we're going to use later on, we use a dynamic term. And if you want to use a link, you use the dynamic link. So if the term, for example, I want to use the title, like I have here, but I want that title to be clickable as well as the image and the read more, then I won't add, for example, the dynamic field. I will have a dynamic link. instead. Then we have the listing grid, as I just mentioned. If you're used to, for example, Elementor or other tools where you can insert the post, a kind of post grid, and then of course you made it 3 columns, 2 columns as you want. That's the same principle here. So that's why we're going to create a grid, a listing grid, and then we use that one. JetForm is something else. That's because of the JetForm builder. So these are the 7 fields that are added by JetEngine. But then again, right now, we don't have any, so I can still update it to save it. But I'm going to come and create a listing. So it says inside JetEngine, I'm going to click on listing. And I need to create a new one. And you always have little videos like that, by the way, to guide you what to do on each of those different elements. So let's click on Add New. We have different type of elements here. It's always going to be, in our case, post. But not post in the sense here, but it's remember that everything, post, pages, and even what we created are posts, in fact, for WordPress. And then we select the post type, which is, in our case, the artists. We put a name, so I'm going to call that all artists. And of course, I'm using Gutenberg on the block editor. Create listing item. And then what I want to do here inside of this place, I can toggle that off, even though I'm sure it will not appear, but let's make sure that it's not even loaded, I guess. So remember, we want the title, we want the image, an extract, and a read more links. So title and image, first of all. So let's start with that. I'm going to choose here the dynamic field. You see right away it shows Shania Twain, but that's okay. In your listing item here, by the way, you can, of course, you have all the regular fields of WordPress, but you have here the listing item settings, where we have what we just chose, which is the post and artist. So that's why we have the title by default. Always choose the post title. And of course, right now, the first artist that it sees is Shania Twain. So for my block here, what I want to choose is anything that is the post or term or anything like that. And which one by default is the title. And this is exactly the one that we want. We want the title. It's not the title of the page, it's the title of that section, so it won't be an H1. It's going to be an H2 and H3, depending on the structure that you have. Let's choose, in this case, an H2. All right, so let's go with that. So it's the title. What we want to do here, I'm going to move that over for now. And it's simply going to be here. We can choose the tag or the HTML tag that we want to use. So in this case, since it's the title, but it's not the main title, we're doing right now the listing. So probably be an H2 or an H3, depending. So let's say for now an H2. In this particular case, if we have just one main title. So we can hide it if the value is empty. I didn't check it. But my assumption is that, of course, if it's empty, nothing will appear. We agree with that. But I think that it's going to still put the H2 right there, which I believe that if we toggle that on, it will not show the H2 at all. So a little bit less code, which is a good thing. So let's keep it like that. And by the way, if you want to style it, we are pretty limited again with what we can do with Gutenberg itself, to be quite honest. That's one of the reasons I'm not a Gutenberg fan. But anyway, we have that little pencil here or brush because of the Jet Style plugin. Don't remember the exact name. So we can come here and change that a little bit. Let's say, for example, can change the color, can change the weight of it. And of course, if I apply something here, then it takes that. So let's push that a little, let's say 40 or 36. So you can see, well, maybe an H2. Let's go with 36. And there we go. So this is for my title. Now let's go with the second thing, which is the image. So now I'm going to add another block after this one. And let's use the dynamic image. So as you can see again, right away, it puts the image there. So remember, this is a small listing, almost like a phone right now. So we can, of course, use the post thumbnail here. I can put it full size, but I'm going to choose the medium size here because it's going to always be small since it's inside something like that. So on the phone, it's going to be, of course, just one column, but the screen is already small. So we can set a fallback image if we want to, or simply hide it if it's not present. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to put it centered, which I cannot do right now with those tools. But if I go again in my Jet Styler, I can change that to be centered right like that. And again, of course, since it's going to be small, it's going to I have just a small space on each side. Now, after that, let's go with the extract. So I don't have the extract field. By the way, if you know, extract is a field, common field that we have. Let's say, for example, if I had a new regular post, I didn't use it on my in my custom post type, but excerpt is something that we have here. If we open that, you have the excerpt that is right there. Okay, so I didn't use it. But one thing that we can do is auto-generate it. So let's insert after that image, first of all, a dynamic field. And it's going to be, it's always the title by default, but of course we're going to change that. And it's going to be, if we choose excerpt, there's nothing right now. But if I choose the content, which is in fact the editor, then I'm going to have a lot of content, of course. So what we can do is shrink that a little bit. So first of all, I'm not expecting an inline or just one line thing. I'm expecting a multi-line. So let's put it like that. Whoops, I'm not on the right thing here. Okay, so let's go with the div. That's going to be all right. So I can hide that again if it's empty. So let's keep it like that. And I want the extract. So I'm missing something here. So sorry, my bad. I was looking for the number of character, but it's not in content. My mistake. Let's go back to excerpt, and even though it's empty, we can automatically generate the excerpt. So it's going to be taken then from the description. Sorry, my bad. So I automatically generate it. We can have a more string character, so 3 little dots by default. We can change that. And we can choose the custom length. So from memory, it was something like 15. So this is the number of words that you use. So I think it's going to be okay like that. Then we want to have a read more link. So let's add after that one a dynamic link. So you might not know, by the way, but in Gutenberg, if you put a slash like that, then you have the most prominent choice, but you can start typing also to get what you want. So I have the dynamic image, but you can start typing it if you don't have that right there. Sorry, what I want now is a dynamic link. So let's go with that. Of course, as always, by default, it's going to take the title, which is not what I want. So the source is the permalink. Permalink is the link of the item. So in other words, if I click on that, I'm going to go to that single element. So that's okay. That's the source of the link. But the label here, as you can see, we have percentage, title, percentage. So that's the label. In our case, the label is always the same. It's only read more. Of course, the link will be different, but the text is always the same. So I'm going to replace that with read more. Here we go. Nothing else special here. I'm going to use a span tag here so that it doesn't put too much space for nothing. And the rest is all right. I can hide it if it's empty. If, well, it's going to always be some content, but anyway. All right, so I'm going to update that. And now I'm going to go back to my template. So I can go there from the builder and then click on the template, or I can go directly to the template here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to edit that one. And now I'm going to insert my listing grid. So listing grid right there. I'm going to choose the grid that I just created. And now, just like a post grid, I can select how many that I want. So on the column number on tablet and on mobile. So let's say, for example, 321. Okay, so if I preview on tablet, it should be 2. And if I preview on mobile, it's only 1. So I don't know, on some sizes, it looks like the image disappears. So I would need to take a look at that, but usually everything works fine. So I have 4 of them. It tells me that there's going to be 3 columns. And I have a little option here. Let's move that. To say the number of posts that I want per page, which is 6 by default. Of course, I have only 4, so that's why I cannot show more than that. But if I put 3, it's going to look like that. So, of course, I can leave that to 6. And I will want to have a pagination if I have more than 6. And that's why I'm going to put, let's say, 3 for now, just to be able to show my pagination in case I have less than that. So let's go. I can use a lazy load and so on. So let's go with that for now. And I'm going to add my pagination right away. Pagination is not part, by the way, of of JetEngine. So if you just use JetEngine, you won't have the pagination. That's a little bit strange, but you won't have the pagination thing. So in order to have it, it's part of the JetSmart filter. So since I have added it, it's considered a filter, the pagination. You see that I have it here. So let's click on that. Okay. So select a provider. So in other words, what will be paginated? So in our case, it's our listing grid. We have the choice between Ajax. In other words, the page will not reload. We can reload the page or mix. And from memory, when we use mix, it's going to use Ajax by default. But if JavaScript is not enabled because Ajax needs JavaScript, then it's going to switch to page reload. If I just choose Ajax, what I think, I didn't test it, but what I think will happen is that if JavaScript is not enabled, then it won't work. So let's use mix in this case. The control, we have the previous text and next text, of course, a little bit strange. So I want to say previous and next simply. And we can disable them, by the way, if you just want to have the numbers. And we can decide how many numbers before and after the current page and the center. I'm going to leave it like that. But of course, if you have many pages, you might want to have just a couple. Let's say below 5, let's say something like that. I want to center that. Again, no option for that. But if I go into my styler, then I will have the item here and right there at the bottom, the alignment for that. Here we go. Bright enough, by the way, to only display it if we have more than 1 page. Okay. So let's update that and test this right away. So let's view the template. Let's view, let's say, this site with the artist. This is what we just did. And here we go. It shows just like we wanted to, just like we just did. And it shows the pagination as well to go to the second page for the other one. So it works perfectly fine. I'm going to put back the 6 item per page. Now, there's just one problem. And if you use something like Bricks, for example, this is where it stops, where you can use a similar thing, except a listing. That won't be a listing, but you can do something pretty similar with the loop, the query loop that you have in Bricks. But as you can see, the order is strange. We have Shania Twain, Queen, Led Zeppelin, and the Beatles. There's no right order, or it's not the right order anyway. That's because if you remember what I told you, it uses by default the last item. I create the Beatles first, then Led Zeppelin, then Queen, and Shania Twain just recently. So it goes from the last to the first because it assumes that it's a post, just like a news article or something like that. And this is where we can change few things if you are using Gutenberg. You have the options here, some options. You have the custom query. We're going to talk about that later. I have the post query, the terms query, and the user query. I think those 3 here, the 3 query, are query options. So if I click on that, for example, I can add a new post query, and I can select that and change my order and offset. Come here, and I'm going to select the order ascending, so from lower to higher, and the order based on, the order based on the title. Here we go. I think I'm going to deactivate my camera, by the way. Here we go. I was wondering if I could do that while I was recording, but no issue. There we go. No more in the wrong place. So now it's in alphabetical order, at least from the first name. But there's only one little problem with that. If I zoom here, and I hope that the recording can zoom in, you see that this is the green inside listing green marked as legacy. What does that mean? It means that it's going to be removed at some point, and probably many, many months, if probably even years from now. But this is not the recommended way anymore. The recommended way is to use the query builder instead of that. So it still uses that. And by the way, when they released version 3, it was the opposite. They deactivated by default. And we had some websites that had problems because, of course, it was relying on that and it was not working anymore. So they released an update 3.0. I know that 3.02 is all right. Probably started with 3.01 of JetEngine, where they did the opposite. They keep it activated by default. And if you want to deactivate it, then you can. And they tell us that it will increase performance a little bit, not that much, but it can optimize the performance. So you got a double benefit. Well, you got one benefit, I should say, which is performance. But at the same time, we know that it's a legacy item, and at some point, it will probably be removed at some point. So they ask us to simply click on that little link. If we don't use it, and we want to deactivate it, we can click on that link. I do use it, but I'm going to remove it. So I'm going to click on that to deactivate that feature. So this is done. Don't click that link because it will reactivate it. So they simply tell us to reload that page, which I'm going to save and then reload. Now, if I click on my listing grid again, you see that some options are gone. The only query that is left is the custom query, the one that they tell us to use. So I can use a custom query, but of course, there's no query created right now. So little problem here. Custom query, it's a little bit a bad thing in a certain way that we have to create one even for small thing. But at the same time, it's to take a good habit, if we can say it like that, because it's really powerful. We can do a lot of things with that. And the more coder, let's say like that you are, the better or the more advantage you'll get out of it. I'm going to keep it like that for now, and I'm going to open a new window. So I'm going to do a right click. You see here, I have the query builder right there. So I'm going to do a right click and open that in a new tab. And I'm going to create a query right there. So let's add a new one. And then again, you have video, by the way. Let's give it a name. So let's call that all artist. Query type. We're going to query the post again. But as you can see, you can use SQL if you know SQL with databases and a lot of other things. So let's keep post query. You can give it an ID if you need to reference that query somewhere else. I don't need it in my case. What's the post type? You have many tabs here. My post type is going to be querying the artist. Post status, we can leave it like that, but of course, just in case we have some that are draft or things like that, we can say that we only want the published one. And there is what we want, order and order by. So I want to change the order, so I'm going to click on that button, and I'm going to order by title and order and ascending from lowest to highest, just like that. I'm going to click Add Query. I'm going to go back to my template here and refresh my page because it won't appear in the dropdown unless I do so. Click on my listing again. By the way, you see that it only shows the published one also by default. And I'm going to come to my custom query, activate that, and select my query that I just created, all artists. And now you can see that it uses the same query. There's one other thing though. If I come back here and put 3 back again, you see that it doesn't change anything. Why? Because our custom query overrides a lot of things. It overrides our query itself. So it overrides the artist, the type of a post that we use. It overrides the number that we use per page. It doesn't override the number, but it does override the post overall and so on. So we need to specify not there, but in the query where we want, or how many, sorry, that we want per page. So I'm going to come back to my query here. That's why I kept it open. And we're going to go inside the pagination section here because that's the number per page. And we have here the post per page. And I'm going to put that back to, well, let's do 3 just for testing. Okay, right there. So did I update that? Post per page is 3. Okay, there's something wrong here. It doesn't take my query. Maybe I forgot to save it, I guess, update it. Oops. All right, so let's refresh that. And now exactly working. The right order, 3 per page. If I come back to my query, update that back to 6 and update it, I can refresh that page. And now I'm back to 6 or 4 because I only have 4. So great. Now it's working as I expect it to work. All right, now let's do the same thing for the album archive. Default layout, this one, we're going to change that. What do we want in this particular case? Something pretty similar to the artist. Let's come back to that later on. We'll leave that for later, but let's go with that for now. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come to my Crocoblock here, theme builder, and we're going to create another template here. Condition, archive again, CPT, sorry, archive, and this time it's going to be the albums. Let's create that. I'm going to change the name, all albums. Click on Add Buddy, create a template. All albums again. This time it's the theme template. Oops, I forgot to put an S, but that's okay. All right, so let's create that. Pretty similar again. We're going to need a listing grid. So we're not going to need to create a listing and then add it to this page. So pretty similar to what we have for the other page. So let's go create our listing. I'm going to open that in a new tab to create my listing grid. Add new. We're going to call that all albums. Let's go, of course, the post type albums. Create listing item. So can hide that or show it, no problem with that. And now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to do this listing here. So the opposite as before, just for change. The album cover, the title, a little excerpt, and then the read more, just like we had for the other one. So let's start with the image. So dynamic image, probably medium size. Let's keep it like that. I can hide it if it's empty, and I'm going to use that to make it center. Then I'm going to add after that the title, so a dynamic field. I'm going to simply change that for an H2 again. Hide if it's empty if you want to. And again, you can change, just like previously, you can change different things here if you want to. Let's say, for example, that I use, I think it was 36 previously. Let's do the same thing. And 700 weight. There we go. Then we're going to add the excerpt. So insert after, dynamic field again. This time it's going to be the excerpt. We generated 15 characters, just like we did previously. It's a multi-line thing. Hide it if it's empty. And finally, our read more link. So it's going to be a dynamic link. Change the label to read more. We keep the permalink. We can put that to span and hide it if it's empty. There we go. So we have our listing for the albums. Let's update that. Let's refresh that page here. Add a listing grid to it. Choose the albums listing grid. And again, same thing. I can change things here, but I know that I'm going to have to do the same thing if I want to have the order, alphabetical order, or something, any other order for that matter. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to come back to my query builder and create another query for this time for the albums. So let's add a new one. Call that all albums. Albums, sorry, let's pick something else. So query type, post query, is going to be the albums. Let's put the order by title again. Could be from release date. You choose the order. By the way, if you want to use release date, something like that, it's not a default WordPress element. So I would need to use another one, which is order by string meta value or numeric meta value. So in our case, it's a date. So I guess string will work fine. Probably not numeric. So could be also maybe a meta in this case. Meta close. I don't think so. Probably meta string. So anyway, and I'm going to do pagination right away at the same time since we're there. So put that 6. Save that right here. I'll refresh that. Let's add our custom query. All albums. Forgot to, by the way, put that to be just the post status published, but anyway, let's do that. And let's add also, by the way, our pagination. So pagination is right there. So I could have maybe saved this as a block, by the way, and reuse the same block. No problem with that. So listing grid, mixed, previous, if you want to do it like that. So let's do that quickly and center that. Here we go. Of course, I can change the styling, the spacing, and so on. Don't want to lose. It's already a long video, so don't want to lose too much time. All right, working. Oh, for the image, forgot one thing. You probably see that right now my image is clickable, but if I refresh that, now using our things, is it clickable? It is. Why? Because let's go back to our listing. This is our listing. When we have the image here, we have the option linked image that is activated by default. So if you don't want the image to be linked, you can deactivate it. But by default, it's using the linked image and it's using the permalink. So it goes to the, in this case, album itself. Okay. So that's why it's still working. It's already working by default out of the box. So next thing that we're going to do is when we click on an artist, we want to go to that artist, which is already the case. but we don't want the default layout. It's going to be something close to that, to be quite honest. But we also, instead of the previous and next artist, we want to have the albums by that artist. So let's see here the example. If I go with Shania Twain, this is the one that has the most album. So we have the albums here, and we can use a slider if we want for that. That goes quite well directly from JetEngine. So let's create that. So I'm going to close a couple of things. So team builder right there. Let's create another one. So this time the condition is going to be a singular element, which is a single artist. I'm going to use, again, CPT, but this time CPT single, and of course, artist. Let's create that. Single artist. Click on Add Body, create a new template. Single artist. Let's click Create. Go to the editor. And now what we want. So we want the title. We want the featured image. We want the entire content. And then we want to have another type of listing. We're going to come back to that after. So let's create the first part. So let's close that one. We don't need it anymore. So let's go with single artist. Here we go. So we don't want that title. We want to have, first of all, the title name, which is the name of the artist. So it's a dynamic field again. It's going to be the title, but not the title of that. It's going to be the title of the artist. Don't need to change that, of course, because it's going to be changed automatically once we show that in the page. But this time, this is going to be a main title. So let's use the H1. And again, if we want to, we can style it, of course, just like we did previously. Let's do that quickly. Here we go. Then let's add after that the image, which is the dynamic image, which will be the thumbnail. Unfortunately, we don't always see, like is the case here, we don't always see the preview. And in Elementor, you can select which element you want to be seen as a preview. I didn't see how to do that. Maybe it's me, but how to do that in Gutenberg. So unfortunately, I won't be able to see here the output. And that's going to be a little bit hard sometimes also to see what we have here because the field doesn't show. So I'm going to use that little browser here to help me. Right, so it's the content after that. So let's use, again, a dynamic field. This time it's going to be the content itself, all the contents. So multi-line, it's going to be div, that's okay. Can toggle that on if we want to. And after that, it's going to be our list of the different albums. So of course it's not created yet. So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go here to create another listing. Now that listing here, if you take a close look, is the exact same thing as what we have, when we showed all the albums. So featured image, title, extract, read more. If I go back, featured image, title, extract, read more. So we can use the same listing that we already used previously. No need to create another one. So let's go back here. Since I already have it, let's insert after. And I'm going to use a listing grid again. All album, because I want to show the albums. Then I'm going to put 2 maybe here. So that's okay for now. But of course, as you can see, no matter what artist that we have, it's always going to show all the albums. So let's say, for example, here, Led Zeppelin. Maybe you didn't know, but it's Led Zeppelin who had these albums. Little problem here. Okay. So first of all, since I have many albums, maybe it's a good time to simply I won't change the post number and everything because we know that, of course, we're going to need a query builder to do that later on. But at least just for now, let's enable one option here in the slider setting. We're going to enable the slider. So now we have that slider. Of course, the data is not the right one, but if we have enough things, we're going to have a slider. So we're still going to keep 3, but we want to have the slides to scroll here. We don't want to scroll 1 at a time because we show 3 at a time. We could if we want to, but I'm going to change that to change 3 at a time. So these 3 will slide at the same time. I'm going to have the arrow navigation. You can use dot navigation or both of them, depending on what you want. You can have that set to autoplay. I want to have a manual change or transition right now. So I'm going to toggle that off. And you can decide whether you want infinite loop or not. Infinite loop simply means that when you're on the last one, like that, it simply goes back to the first one. Okay. If not, then you're at the end and you cannot go further. But as you can see, it doesn't remove the arrows anyway. So that's why I keep the infinite loop. All right, so let's update that. We know that this works. The only problem is it's not querying the albums of just that artist. And we're going to do that through the query builder. And that's a good thing at the same time because, of course, we know that we need that to reorder the albums anyway. So I'm going to create another query here. And I'm going to call that albums by artist, let's say. An artist or artist. Anyway, that's going to be okay. So post query, again, it's going to be the album because that's the album that we want to get. Let's put that only just a publish one. We can order that. This time, maybe, since it's only the album of that particular artist, why not put them in the order of the release date? Makes more sense. So again, I'm going to choose string value here. The meta key is the name. Remember, it's release date. And the order will be from the ascending, in other words, from the oldest to the more recent one. Hopefully that string will work fine. Now let's go with the pagination again. Don't know if we're going to need the pagination because we show only 3. So this particular case probably won't need that one. Okay. So what do we need now? We only want those that are from this particular artist. So that's why we have relations. So I'm going to go to the posts and page. And we only want the posts that are in something. In what? Not a particular field. I'm going to need something dynamic. So I'm going to click on that icon here. And now you can choose the ID, you can choose the user ID, and so on. What we want here is the relation between 2 fields. So we have the related children, from, between, and so on. This is marked as legacy. So not sure this is the one that we want anyway, because it's not a parent-child relationship here in the sense that it's a post is a child of another post. But even if it was, I wouldn't use them because it's legacy. So we have related items right there. I'm going to click on that. And now you see from relation, that's what we want. So I'm going to select my relation. And the relation is the artist and the album. It's between the artist and the album right now. So I'm going to choose that one. From the object, I'm inside the album. The album is the children or the child of the artist. Sorry, the opposite. I'm inside the artist and I want the children of the artist, which is the albums. Sorry. So I'm going to choose from child object. And initial object ID from, I'm going to use the default WordPress, the current page. Let's apply that and add my query. Now let's get back Here in my single artist, I'm going to refresh because, of course, I just created the query loop, the query builder, sorry. Go back to my listing, and then I'm using the same listing for the look, but I'm using a different custom query. And this is where it's powerful because I don't have to create a listing for each of them. I can use the same listing, but by changing the query, then I can use it for different purpose. So let's use, again, album bar artist. And of course, we have done at found because that's the general page. That's the template. Let's save that and come back to our Led Zeppelin artist. And bingo, we only have Led Zeppelin album. If I go back to my artist and I show Shania Twain, I have those three elements and I have that little arrow here for the lazy load. That's why the image appeared after. Beatles, we have the Sgt. Pepper and Abbey Road, and all by release date, by the way, so it works fine. Let's go back to Shania Twain. Didn't take the time to look at it. Is it by order? Woman and Me, Coming Over, Up, and Now. Works perfectly fine. Great. So now we have the single artist that is working. Now let's do something pretty similar to the albums. So when I click on any album from this page or from this page, I want the title, I want the album cover, I want the artist. This is what is different. I want the release date, and I want the taxonomy, then the content, and then boom, another listing, which is the songs. So this time we know what we will need. So why not start with the listing of the songs right away? Let's do it that way. So again, I'm going to close that one and I'm going to come back to my theme builder here to create another one. This condition is going to be the singular, CPT single, and this time it's going to be for the albums. Whoops, I'm creating the template. What I said I wouldn't do. So let's say single album. Okay. But I'm going to create a template. Let's say right now, single album. It's been a long day, sorry. Go to editor. But in my single album, well, okay, let's do it since I'm there. Okay, title, cover. So let's do that. Dynamic field. Title, one line. It's going to be an H1. It's a single album. Styling the same way as we style the others. It makes more sense. All right. Album cover. So insert after. Dynamic image. Post thumbnail. Let's put it at medium. Don't link the image. I don't want to link it to anything, by the way. That's okay. Can hide it if it's empty. Let's insert another one after that one, which will be the, okay, now we have the artist, by the artist. So that will be still a dynamic field. This is still going to be a post, but this time it's not the title. It's the title that we want, but not the title of the current album. We want the title of another post type, which is the artist. So if we scroll down, we see that we have our relations right there. So the children from the artist album relation, the parent from the artist album relation, the children from the album and song, and the parent from album song. So now we are inside a single album, and we want to have the artist. The artist is the parent of the album, so I'm going to choose parents from the artist album. And now you can see, boom, we have many values, or we could have many values. So we have that little error here. We need to change get value callback. How do we do that? Here in the filter output, we're going to need to filter the output, what will be rendered, in other words. And this is where we have the callback. So let's choose, my experience, related post list and related items seems to be the same thing in this particular case anyway. So I'm going to choose the first one, related post list. And now the error is gone. I'm going to change this field to be span because I don't want too much space. Can hide that if we want to. Uh, we can set that to be a single value because we want just the first one. But in our case, we know we have just one anyway. So that's really up to you whether we want to toggle that on or off. Okay. Do we want to add link to related post? Yes. That means that we were going to have a link just like that to our artist. So we keep it. For the element that we load, since it assumes that we can load many things, just like a taxonomy in a certain way, we have only options for many data. That's it, like that. So we have an unordered list and an ordered list or a div. We could use one of those two and simply with CSS remove the bullets and so on, but I'm going to use div. There's going to be a little drawback because of that, but still I'm going to put some CSS to correct that. Delimit by a comma, but of course we will only have one anyway, so that's okay. So that will give me something like Shania Twain or the Beatles. What I want is a little bit more than that. I want to have by in bold and italicized. So I'm going to come to the customize field output. Okay, so we filter the field output and then we customize how it will look. So let's toggle that. And you see you have a little %s, which is in fact the data itself. We can add content before or after that, and then that will be the content itself. And it does support HTML if you know it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the B tag for bold, the I tag for italic, add the value, then close my italic and my bold tag, and simply put a comma here and a space. Sorry, that's not how I want it. I want that after, like that. And then here, what I want to be in italic is my by, and maybe column, and then the space and my value. Sorry. This is what I want. Let's update that and see how we are so far. So let's refresh my artist here, Shania Twain. So I have Shania Twain, my image, my description, the different things here. So this was already done. Let's click on any album. So now we have the title, we have the album cover, and we have by Shania Twain, where we can click on it. And if you take a look at the bottom with the URL, we will go to the Shania Twain artist. Works fine. The only problem is that this is its own div, so it's on 2 lines. Not really interesting. So in order to change that, I'm going to have to add a little bit of CSS. So I'm going to copy some CSS that I already created. Well, let me simply show it to you. Let me activate the inspector here. Sorry, it's in French, but anyway. So let's go there, and we see that we have a span tag that surrounds everything because we have selected a span tag here. Where is it? There we go. So this is my span tag that we have right there. Sorry, there we go. Then we have in bold the by, so the prefix, if I can say it, that we have there. And then we have the value, but that value, if you remember, uses the div tag. So that's why we have a div like that. And of course, a div by default is a block element. It takes in its own line. So we do have a span inside of it in case we have many items. We have just one with a link. That's okay. But because of the div, it's on 2 different lines. So what I need to do is add a little bit of CSS to put everything back on one line. So I'm going to use the listing grid So this one here, listing dynamic field content, in order to be able to use that. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to put that probably back into the, forgot to take that code, but let's say, where did I put my code? Okay, just give me 2 seconds. Okay, yeah, there we go. This is the code that I want. So dynamic field content here, and then inside of it, the div. And I want those to be displayed in lines. So let's go. Here I'm using Astra, like I mentioned. So I'm going to go into my customizer. And I'm going to add it to my additional CSS. And you have that in any theme, by the way, because that's a WordPress thing. So let's add that to my code that is already there. So my listing here and the div inside of it, and use the display inline. So I'm going to publish that, refresh right here. And now everything is on the same line. All right, great. Next thing, I want my release date. So just make sure I'm on the last item. Okay, let's add another one after. It's going to be a dynamic field again. This time, we don't use a default WordPress thing, nor a relationship, things like that. We are using a custom field, the release date. So we need to change that, the source here, to the metadata. Metadata, if you remember, is simply the custom field for JetEngine. So we need to choose the meta key. If I click on that, you see the custom field for song, for album, and for the user. So for album, you see I have my release date that is right here. This is the one that I want. It's going to be one line. I want that to be a span, to be on the same line. And let's say I want to customize the field output. So I want to have bold tag again, release date, let's say, column, close my bold tag, and a space, and the value. Let's update that and see how it looks like so far. So release date, boom, ISO format. I would like to have a more user-readable format like that, November 19, 2002. So what I need to do is come here and again filter the output. I want to filter how we receive the data, not how it looks necessarily here. So I'm going to turn that on. And you see you have format date and format date localize. So I'm going to use format date. It uses the default format, which is the one that I want. If you want to have a different format, you can see here we have a little link to see the documentation of WordPress to know what to put there. If you want to have a different format, let's say, for example, year, month, and day. So you can go there and know how to put that format. But in my case, this format is the full month, the day, comma, and the year. This is exactly what I want. So I'm going to keep it like that. Update and refresh. And here we go. Next, the taxonomy, the genre. So let's go again. I'm going to close this one. Always mix it with that one. So let's add after that one. Again, this now it's a term, so it's a taxonomy, sorry. So now this time it's going to be a dynamic term. So dynamic term is not there. I'm going to have to type a little bit for dynamic terms. Here we go. Which taxonomy? Album genre is the only one that we have created. The other one are default WordPress ones. So let's go with that one. We want to show all the terms are just a certain number. In our case, we know we only have one, so we can use whatever we want. Let's say we're going to keep show all terms in case Shania Twain sometimes are rock and country in the same time, maybe. So we can keep it that, and it's going to be separated by a comma. Do we want that to be linked? So that means that when I click on that, it shows me all the elements for country. But since as you can see here, I didn't filter that and so on. And I don't want to take the time to create another template for that. So I'm gonna, in my case, deselect the link. I'm gonna remove that. You can put some text before and after the list, the entire list, not each element, but the entire list. So this is exactly what I want to do. So genre, again, maybe put it in bold as the other ones. Uh, okay, bold, and maybe a space. We will keep it, and we can hide if it's empty, of course. So genre, country, great. Next thing, extract. So let's add after, not extract, sorry, this time is going to be the full content. So dynamic field again, and content. I'm going to use the div tag, multi-line for sure. You can hide that if it's empty if we want to, and that's about it. And again, I could use that to put some margin at the top, bottom, and so on. Maybe something like that. Let's unlink that and put maybe 50 pixel above and bottom. Let's update that and refresh. Here we go. Great, everything working so far. Next thing I want to do is add the albums at the bottom. Not the albums, sorry, the song listing at the bottom. So I need to create the song listing and then, of course, add it to my album. All right, so let's create the listing. Okay, so for the listing of the songs, I have my album here. I have my CSS here. Let's close that. Let's go here and create my listing. Add new. And let's call that songs from an album. It's going to be, of course, the songs. Let's create that. And it's pretty simple, as you can see, by the way. It's only the song number, the song title, and the length. There's one little problem, though, and you're going to see that in a couple of minutes. So songs from an album. Let's add a dynamic field. And it's going to be a metadata because now we will start with the number, which is a custom field. So let's use song order. Let's put a span. And let's filter the output. It's going to be a number that we receive, as you can see here, the example. Again, from last to first by default, so we're going to need to change that with the query builder. But for now, first of all, let's add a space, a dash, and a space. Then the second element is the title. So we'll need to have another dynamic field. For the title, let's keep it like that. I won't change this time for another tag except for the span here. No need to change the output or anything like that. And then the length. So insert it after dynamic field again, metadata, and length. Again, span tag. All right, so it works fine, but as you can see, everything is separated on 3 different lines. And we don't really have the choice because, unfortunately, unlike some other tools, We cannot use, for example, let's say if I had another tool, I could probably do something like here, song order, then a dash like that, then the title, and then the length. And we saw something similar to that with the link previously, okay? But unfortunately, here it won't work. So something like that will not work. It will simply display like that on the front end. So maybe because it's not part already of a dynamic field, I guess. So it doesn't interpret it. It just shows it like that. So because of that, we cannot do something like that. I'm going to remove this. So the only way to put them all in one single line is to use some CSS. So here in the listing item, we can provide some CSS for the listing item itself. So I'm going to use some CSS here. I'm going to paste this one, but I know that I'm going to need something different. So this one is a post 506. So I guess this is the number that it's going to be there. So I'll need to check that again. Let me change it right now, and we'll come back to take a look at that later on. So first of all, let's add that now to our template. So let's refresh our page and add that listing item, and we'll see if it doesn't work or anything. We'll take a look at the ID that we need to add after that. So let's see, dynamic field here is the last one. So let's add after that a listing grid. So again, we can use two, and we're going to use these songs from an album. All right, so maybe we can use two columns instead of three or just one. And as you can see, it's limited to 6 by default, but did we create? Sorry, this video is in multiple parts because it's really long to do and so on. So I don't remember. Did we do the query builder for the songs? No. Okay, so we'll need to create one as well. Okay, so yes, we did need that. We will use that. And as you can see, it should be outputted as we want. But of course, these are not the right songs. And of course, as you can see, we have just 6. We can have more than that, but all the songs are showing. So again, we need a query builder, first of all, for ordering, but also to only select the ones that are part of this album. So the exact same thing that we did for the albums for the artist, in other words. So let's go and create a new one. So I'm going to call that songs by album. Let's target the songs, of course, only the ones that are published. And the order will be the song order. So let's do that right away. So again, this is a custom field. So it's going to be ordered by string meta value or number meta value. So in this case, it's a numeric field. So it's going to be the second one. Meta key is the slug or ID. So it's song order. And of course, it's going to be from lowest to highest. There's no limit, so no pagination here. We want all of them to be visible. But we still need to filter only the albums or the songs of that album. So like we did previously, we need to go inside the post and page and the posts that are inside something. Click on that dynamic thing and related items. The relation will be the one between albums and song. So the album that we are in is the parent. So it's going to be the child object that we want. And again, the default WordPress one. So let's click apply. Let's add the query. Come back to our template, refresh that. And then choose our custom query here, use a custom query, and select the one that we just created, songs by album, update that, and refresh our album here. So now we have the right songs, we have all the songs, and we have from left to right in columns. We cannot really put them differently except if we add some CSS with some CSS columns. So this is the easiest way to show it, but of course, if you know a little bit more with CSS3, you can use columns this way instead. All right, so we did everything that we wanted to do. We can display the album and the artist. We can display a single one. So the only thing that we can do is a little bonus. If we take a look at my example, my final example versus this one, in my final example for the albums, we have a filter. So we will do the same thing in our case. This one is not limited to JetEngine, of course, but not limited is not directly included in JetEngine. We need something else, which is Jet Smart Filter in order to do it. So Jet Smart Filter being installed, let's take a look at that. So we can index the filters for faster search, but of course, right now we don't have any filters. So if you remember, just taking a look here, we're going to close that one later, but we do already have filters added by JetSmart Filters. So we need to specify the type of filters that we want when we create the filter, and then we will insert the filter based on that. So we have checkbox filter, we have select filters, range filters, and so on, date period. So we have a bunch of those, as you can see here. But in order to be able to insert, for example, a rating filter, we need first of all to create a rating filter in Smart Filter. All right. So in our case, what we want is two filters. The first one is a drop down. The second one is a range filter. And then we have an apply filter button. So let's start with the first one, which will be a select filter. So let's add a new one. So the first one will be by artist. So let's say artist filter. The filter label is what will appear here above. So we can say artists. And the active filter label is the filter when we click on it and use it. So if we don't want to change anything, we simply leave it empty. So no change here. Filter type is going to be a select, which is a drop down. And we will choose that the data source will be, in this case, we have the choice between manual input, taxonomies, post, custom fields, and JetEngine glossary. So it's going to be post in this case. The one that we want is the artist. And the placeholder is simply when nothing is selected, like in this case, we have select and ellipsis. So that's what we have here. So if you want to change that, please choose one or something like that. Then you can change it here. Then a required field here is the query variable. On which field will it query? So sometimes you can leave it empty. Sometimes you can use, we have some examples here. So it's most of the time it's going to be a specific field that you have created. But in this particular case, remember that we are filtering the albums, but not with an album field. It's the artist field. So remember, that means it's the relationship between our artist and our albums. So in order to do that, we have here, since we have created relations, we have that little section here that says simply related children times 5 for the artist album, filters children items list by parent IDs. Then we have the parents by children IDs, the album song, same thing. So in our case, we want to filter the albums, but based on the artist. So of course, it's one of those first two, artist album relation. Now, we want to filter the children by the parent or the parent by the children. while the album is the children of the parent, which is the artist, which is the one that we will select. So we need this one. We filter the children based on the parent ID. So what we want is this one here. We can select that, or copy that, and then paste it in our query variable. And of course, it needs to be equal to that. So let's publish this and try it. Let me go back to my template here, the album template, all albums. Let's edit that one and add the filters at the top. So at some point, I'm going to have two filters plus an apply button. So let's add right away a column in order to put everything on the same line. So let's say above that one, I guess. We're going to add insert before. We're going to insert columns. Let's say this one here, 3 columns. And right there, I'm going to insert filters. So let's say a select filter. You see that my icons are a little bit colored, so I know it's a filter, though it doesn't specify it. So please select a filter. I'm going to select the artist filter. What does it filter? Of course, is our listing grid. And this is where if you have more than one on the page, you will need the ID, by the way, which is not our case. But if it would be, then we will need an ID. So we can leave Ajax or use mix one, up to you. Apply on value change. Let's keep it like that for now. So we can show the apply button for each element, which is not what we want. And we can show the filter label. So I want to show the filter label because I want to show the artist just on top of it. And of course, we can style it, which is not what I'm doing right now. We can apply an indexer so that we can index it. But since we have only 4 artists, it's not really required in this case here. So let's update that. Refresh my albums. And now I can select Shania Twain, and I will only see the albums by Shania Twain, Queen, and so on. So it works perfectly well. Let's add another filter. So first of all, I need to create it. Let's add a new one. And this time we have that new button. So the next one will be a range because it's going to be years. So I'm going to say album by year. I think I'm going to put years here, something like that. The filter type will be a range. We can have a prefix and a suffix if we want to. We can have a 1,000 separator. And we can have the minimum and maximum value. In this case, of course, I don't want to start with the year, sorry, this one, the year 0, makes no sense. Let's say I start with the 1950s. And of course, we can leave it empty for the maximum value if we don't want any maximum, or I can specify a date. Of course, if I say something like 2022, because we are in 2022, I would need to change that every year. So maybe I can put a higher number. And the step, I don't want to change year per year. So let's go with decades, 10 years. Again, we need a query variable. This time it's year. It's the year of the album, which is the current element that we filter on. So I can simply specify the name of the field, which is the release date. Let's publish that. Go back to my template. I will need to refresh surely because it didn't exist. So of course, usually when you know that you do that by advance, you will create all your filter first. So let's do a range filter. Select that album by year, listing grid, mix, let's say. And on value change, let's show the label. The label, you cannot change it here, by the way. So if I want to have a different label, let's say maybe something like release date. We have year here as well. But anyway, if you want to put something like release date, you'll need to change the label on the filter itself. So maybe I'll do that. But anyway, let's update that. Refresh. And now I can filter by artist and also by year. And as you can see, it works perfectly fine. But sometimes, especially when you have more than one filter, it's not necessarily a good idea to have them filtered right away. And by the way, for those knowing about accessibility, it's not good for accessibility to have that right away change the value. So you know that we can add an apply button, but then it adds an apply button for each of them, which makes no sense, of course. So instead, what I'm going to do, and that's why I have a third column, I'm going to add an apply button. So we can select anything we want first and then use an apply button. I'm going to select provider again and use Ajax. We can change the label if you wanted to. So that's perfectly fine. Of course, maybe style it a little bit better. Let's say no one wastes too much time on that, but if we put something like, I don't know, something like that, maybe the color will be probably white with the background color blue. Some padding, let's say, I don't know, 7, 10, 7, 10. What does it look like? Not too bad. Okay, let's keep it like that. All right, so let's update. First of all, of course, right now we apply the changes right away. So I need to change that as well. So let's say that, oops, I think it's not selected. Block style. Okay, sorry, I need to come back here. So I'm going to say apply on, click on the apply button. So it can be the apply button of the element, but it works with the apply button general one as well. So let's do that with this one as well. Value change on apply button. And let's update that and refresh. So now if I select Queen and those years, apply filter, here we go. If we change that to 1980s, we don't have any data. And that message can be changed, of course, when we use the listing here. So no data was found. No album found in, please change your search query or criteria or something like that. Here we go. Great. We can also, by the way, I didn't do that in the final example, but we could also add after that one, maybe another column, but anyway, a reset button that will remove filter, sorry, remove filter that will remove all filters. So maybe I should, well, I won't take the time to redo the entire styling, but maybe add a fourth column and move that one inside of it. I think we need advanced, more advanced tools, like for example, Gutenberg block, to be able to change the width of the column, I think. Is it possible? Don't know if it's possible to do so by simply with the default Gutenberg tool, can we change the width of a column in our default layout, content, wide, width here? Okay, there we go. I guess it's like that. So let's say this one will be I don't know, 33%. This one as well. And then those will be something like um, that will work 20%. And this one, how much do we have left? 13%. Is that enough? 13, 14. So let's say 15%. And this one, 15. Is that enough? Okay, yes, it is. All right, so let's keep it like that. Great. So now I can remove my filters to reset my button. Great. And of course, it doesn't appear when there's no filter. So as soon as you add a filter, then you can remove it. You can also display the filters that are applied right now if you want to. One last thing that we could do is show you how to use the JetForm builder to be able to add directly in the form front end, be able to add an element. We'll do that just for the artist, just as an example, because as you remember, we can go inside the JetEngine here and we can enable the forms, but it's a legacy feature. So how to do that without using JetEngine itself with JetForm Builder. So let's create a form here. Let's say I'm going to add new, and I'm going to say, I don't know, add an artist. You have the post ID that has already been added by default with the current post ID, and you have a text field added by default. I'm going to change this one. Change, for example, the label to artist name. And let's call that simply name. You can add a description if you want to, and so on. It's going to be a text field. Let's add another one. And by the way, there's a whole list of fields here added for you for a form. So let's say that I want to have, it's going to be the picture. So media, I guess, media field. So field label, picture, form, field name, let's call that picture as well. User access here is really important. So JetForm here, since we want to upload an image, you will need to be registered. Okay, so if you don't need to upload an image, it can be any user. But since we want to upload an image, that will not work. The image will not be uploaded. So we need to choose any registered user or those who have upload access, one or the other. I'm going to use that one, allow to upload files. And then I will have that little toggle here that appears that allows me to upload the image, the insert, the attachment. Field value, I'm going to choose attachment ID because that's how it works. It uploads the file and has an ID to it. And then we use the ID to display the file. File types, let's say that I want to use JPEG, GIFs, maybe, well, strange, but anyway, PNG maybe. Oops. And let's say WebP file. So these are the file types that are allowed to be uploaded. All right, so what else? We have the artist, we have the description or biography of the artist. So let's add another field for that. That could be a WYSIWYG field, why not? So what you see is what you get. There's one here. So biography, let's say. Let's call that biography. Okay, that's gonna be all right. We can put those required, by the way, if we wanted to. What else? We have the artist name, we have the picture, we have the biography, and I think that's all. The albums, would be added in a different place. So let's keep it like that. I can keep my submit button or submit or add artist, let's say, and it's going to submit the form. Now my form is done, but I need to go to the General Jet Form tab here to decide what this form will do. So the form settings here, the default layout, we could use column or row. I'm going to keep that to the default. Require mark, if we have required field, you can choose whatever you want. Let's put an asterisk. That's a traditional one. Label field, it's going to be leave that to default, but you can put div or label if you want to. Submit type, page reload or Ajax. Let's keep that to default. That's not what is important right now. What is important here is the action. So what are we going to do? Send mail by default? I don't even want to send mail, honestly, but I could. Well, let's keep it like that, and you can add another action for something else. But since I don't want to configure the email, I'm going to change this one to insert or update a post. Then I'm going to click on the pencil to edit this one. So the post type, where will we add it? Of course, in this case, artist. Post status, I'm going to select pending review. In other words, when someone submits a new artist, it will not be published right away. I will receive an email, or if we want to, and then I will have to come and approve that artist, publish it, in other words. Now I need to map my fields, the form fields, with the current elements. Post ID, of course, is the ID, but take a big warning here. If you say post ID, it will update the post. This is used for if you have a form that updates or edits an artist in the front end, not when you insert a new one. Because what will happen is that you will most likely put that form inside a page called, let's say, add an artist. If you choose something like that, it's going to update the page that has the form. So if I create a new page, let's say that I do that. Okay, add new page. I don't know if this one, I'm going to update that right away if it's not done because I want to publish it. So add a new page, so add an artist. And I'm going to insert a form here. So form, let's say jet form. That's what I thought. So I'm going to publish that and refresh so that I can see it in my dropdown. So add an artist, field layout here. As you can see, some fields are the same as what we had previously. So you can change it or the other place. So let's leave it like that. Let's put the required mark here. And that's all. And you see you have a successful and error message here that you can simply click and edit if you want to. So let's update that. And yeah, if I show that page now, if I fill that out and add an artist, this page here called add an artist has the ID 513. So it says this page, the page 513, which is the page add an artist with the form itself, that will be updated. So that page, in other words, will disappear and be replaced by the content that you have uploaded or entered. This is not what you want, of course. So that's why here it's really important that you don't, if I come back here, that you don't use post ID when you want to insert. Just leave it like that with the two dashes. Now the artist name is going to be the post title. The picture is going to be the thumbnail or featured image. Accept the ID attachment. That's why we selected ID first. And biography here is simply the content. And if you add other custom fields, then you can add other options here as well. Let's update that. Update my form. Now let's come back to this page since we already created it. I'm going to refresh that. And let's fill that. I'm the artist. I upload a picture. So let's say I'm going to upload my picture, because if I upload a logo, it's already there. So let's upload this picture. This one, let's say. Doesn't appear here. I think it's only when you edit a post. So since it's not already uploaded, you won't see appear here. Biography. So this is some content about that artist. And click Add Artist. Form successfully submitted, but of course, if I go to see the artist, it's not there. Why? Because it's now pending. So if I go to see my artists here, you see that Nelson Terrien is there, but it's pending. So let's edit its status and publish it, update. And now, if I refresh that page, I am there as an artist as well. And I don't have any album, so no data found, or I could have selected not to show the listing since I don't have any album yet anyway. So I hope that you found this training helpful, that you learned a lot. Of course, it was pretty long, but don't forget that you can use the time code. If you liked that video, add a thumbs up. If you have any comments, write them below, and I hope I will be able to answer you. And I hope I have the time to create other videos like that as well. So please subscribe to the channel and click that little bell icon as well if you want to be notified when there are new videos like this one. So thank you and have a good day.